The diesel pump clicked off at 412.87, and I watched my breath fog out in front of me like smoke signals nobody was reading. December in Nebraska will freeze your bones if you let it. And that morning outside Omaha, the wind off I-80 cut through my Carhartt like it was tissue paper. 42 years old, 18 of them behind a wheel, and I still couldn't figure out how to dress for a Midwest winter. I grabbed my black coffee from the pilot counter, 2 sugars, no cream, same order since high school, and headed back to my rig. The cab radio crackled with the usual ghost riders, truckers shooting the breeze about way stations and lot lizards, and that one stretch of I-70 in Kansas where time seems to stand still. I'd logged 847 miles in the last 36 hours, hauling frozen beef from a processing plant in Grand Island to a distribution center in Des Moines, then deadheading back for my next load. My hands were calloused enough to sand wood, the kind of hands you get from wrestling 18-wheelers through blizzards, because your daughter needs new violin strings and your mortgage doesn't pay itself. Riley was 12 that winter, already better on that instrument than anyone had a right to be at her age. She got my wanderlust and her mother's precision, a dangerous combination in a kid, the kind that makes you proud and terrified in equal measure. Every time she picked up that violin, I saw the future spreading out in front of her like an open highway. Juilliard, maybe. Or a seat in some orchestra I couldn't pronounce. Or teaching kids in a small town somewhere, passing on the gift. Whatever she wanted. That's what fathers haul freight for, to make sure their kids can become whatever they're supposed to be. I climbed into Kim's Prius before heading to my rig. She'd asked me to top it off while she balanced books at the Fleet Dispatch office. 14 years married to my high school sweetheart, and I still got a kick out of hearing her voice over the CB during my runs. Honey over static, that's what the guys at the yard called it. That's when I saw the receipt stub. It was nothing, really. A gas station receipt from a Shell outside Lincoln, crammed between the console and the passenger seat, like someone had shoved it there in a hurry. Kim had mentioned a client pickup in Lincoln last week. Standard dispatcher stuff. Meeting a new owner-operator about joining our fleet. Lincoln's about 100 miles from our place in Omaha, so figure 200 round trip, give or take. The odometer read 478 miles since her last fill-up. I sat there in the cold Prius, engine off, staring at those numbers like they were written in a foreign language. 478 miles. For a 200-mile round trip. That's an extra loop the size of circling the Platte River twice for absolutely no reason. The cold seeped through my jacket. I should have started the engine, blasted the heat, done something productive. But I couldn't move. Couldn't think past those numbers. Couldn't stop replaying every text she'd sent me over the past few months. Working late. Audit running long. Greg needs help with the quarterly. And wondering which ones were real and which ones were cover stories. How long had I been blind? How long had she been driving circles around my life while I hauled freight and dreamed about vacations we'd never take? Now, I'm a numbers guy. Have been since I started running my own loads and realized nobody was going to manage my fuel costs but me. Numbers don't lie. They don't have agendas or feelings or reasons to protect your ego. They just sit there, cold and honest, waiting for you to do something with them. Kim had texted me mid-shift yesterday. Smooth haul, love you. I'd smiled at it like an idiot, thinking about how lucky I was to have someone who still checked in after 14 years. Meanwhile, she'd been running up mystery miles on a car we both paid for. No paranoia before this. None. Just her glow from those overtime audits she'd been pulling lately, which I'd chalked up to holiday crunch at the dispatch office. The extra money had been nice. Helped pay for Riley's bow rosin and the braces she'd need next spring. I'd been grateful. Grateful. While my wife was apparently taking scenic tours of Iowa for reasons she forgot to mention. I drove home with the radio off, which never happens. The silence felt like a passenger riding shotgun, judging me for asking questions I wasn't sure I wanted answered. Our ranch-style starter home looked the same as always when I pulled in around noon. White siding going gray, the gutters I kept meaning to clean, Riley's bike leaning against the garage where she always left it. Inside, the house was quiet. Riley was at school, and Kim wasn't due back from the dispatch office until 5. I plugged the Prius into my OBD scanner. Now, before you go thinking I was already in detective mode, let me explain something. I'm co-owner of that car under Nebraska marital property law. I've got every legal right to check the diagnostics on a vehicle I'm paying for. The scanner was a perk from my shop days before I went long haul, and I used it all the time on our vehicles. Nothing shady about it. The code that popped up was PO171, lean fuel mixture, which happens when an engine idles too long without running properly. The timestamp matched a 3-hour window last Tuesday when Kim had supposedly been working from home on quarterly reports. 3 hours of idling at a location that wasn't our house. 3 hours when she'd texted me a photo of her laptop screen, coffee mug artfully placed beside it, claiming she was drowning in spreadsheets. I remembered texting back a heart emoji like a sap. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through more data. Error logs going back weeks, months, a pattern of extended idles at the same location, always during times she'd claimed to be somewhere else. I pulled up the family tracking app on my phone. We'd set it up years ago when Riley started walking to school alone. Safety check-ins, Kim had called it. All 3 of us were on it. All 3 of us had agreed. Kim's location history showed a detour to a motel chain outside Des Moines, 150 miles off any route that made sense for her job. The timestamp overlapped perfectly with a verification call she'd mentioned having with Greg Hollister, the fleet auditor who'd started about 8 months back. Greg. Always crunching numbers with her over lunch breaks. Always finding reasons to stop by her desk. 40 years old, divorced, drove a silver Silverado that he kept way too clean for someone who supposedly worked in an office all day. Audit my ass, I said to the empty kitchen. I didn't punch anything. Didn't scream. Just sat there at the table where we'd eaten 10,000 meals together, watching the winter light creep across the floor, feeling something shift inside me like a transmission grinding into a gear it wasn't meant to find. Kim rolled in around 5:30, looking tired in that specific way she'd been looking tired for months now. Hair slightly mussed, blazer wrinkled, the kind of disheveled that could mean a hard day at work or could mean something else entirely. Rough audits, she said, dropping her purse on the counter. Greg's a real stickler for the quarterly reconciliations. I handed her a cup of coffee. Same way she liked it, splash of cream, no sugar. Hey, weird thing. Noticed a mileage glitch on the Prius. Showed a Des Moines detour last week? She sipped the coffee, paused just a beat too long before answering. Client reroute. Forgot to log it. The timestamp showed a motel stop. Long one. Her laugh came out cracked around the edges. Coffee run, hun. Stress miles. You know how I get during crunch time? Sometimes I just need to drive and clear my head. I nodded, kept my face neutral, which wasn't easy. The front door banged open and Riley burst in like a tornado with a violin case. Dad, I nailed the scales today. Ms. Patterson said I'm ready for the intermediate repertoire. I swept her up in a hug that probably lasted too long, burying my face in her hair that smelled like school cafeteria and rosin. That's my girl. Knew you had it in you. Can we have meatloaf tonight? The good kind with the ketchup crust? You got it, kiddo. Kim kissed Riley's forehead and disappeared into the bathroom to freshen up. I made meatloaf and mashed potatoes while Riley practiced her scales in the living room, the notes floating through the house like they belonged there. Normal evening, normal family, normal everything. Except the numbers didn't add up, and numbers don't lie. After Riley went to bed, I pulled up the Prius's built-in telematics on my laptop. Standard feature since 2018 on most models. Owner app. Completely legal for me to access. What came up made my stomach drop through the floor. 8 months of data. 8 months of off-log idols at an address I didn't recognize. I plugged it into Google Maps. Apartment complex on the south side of town. The kind of place with a pool nobody uses and a gym that smells like feet. I cross-referenced the timestamps with Kim's work calendar, which she kept shared on the family Google account. Every single idol overlapped with audit overtime. Every single one. The extra money she'd been bringing in, $200 in bonus hours over the past quarter, suddenly looked a lot different. Not overtime. Cover story. I sat in the dark kitchen until 2 a.m., laptop glowing like an accusation, trying to figure out what to do with information I'd never asked for and couldn't unknow. The next morning, I told Kim I needed to run errands while she worked from home. What I actually did was drive to the address from the telematics log. Greg Hollister's apartment complex. I'd looked up the property records the night before. Public information, available to anyone with an internet connection. Unit 4B, second floor, corner unit with a balcony facing the parking lot. I parked on the public street with a clear view of the visitor spaces and waited. At 12:47 p.m., Kim's Prius pulled into the lot. She parked in visitor spot C12, checked her reflection in the rear-view mirror, and walked toward Building 4 with the kind of bounce in her step I hadn't seen in years. Not the exhausted trudge of a woman headed to a work meeting. The eager stride of someone looking forward to where they were going. I took 3 photos with my phone, time-stamped, location-tagged. Then I drove home. That evening, I tailed her errand run after supper. She'd mentioned needing to pick up some files from the office, which apparently required fresh lipstick and her good jeans. I hung back 3 car lengths, just like I'd learned from too many crime podcasts on long hauls. The Prius didn't go anywhere near the office. It went to a motel off I-80, the kind of place with weekly rates and a neon sign missing half its letters. Greg's silver Silverado pulled in 2 minutes later. I parked 2 blocks away and waited. 25 minutes. That's how long they were inside. I sat there in my truck, engine idling, watching the door of room 114 like I was waiting for a confession I already knew was coming. They came out together, casual as anything. Her arm brushed his as they walked to their vehicles. He said something that made her laugh. That honey laugh I used to think was reserved for me. Audit wrap? I muttered to my empty cab. Sure looks like it. I found the number for Lena Tate through Bobby Weston, a guy I'd run loads with for 6 years before his wife cleaned him out in a divorce that made the local paper. Bobby had used her, said she was worth every penny. Professional, he'd said. Doesn't judge, doesn't gossip, just gets the facts. Lena showed up to our meeting at a Denny's off Highway 6 looking like someone's aunt. Mid-50s, reading glasses, cardigan over a Huskers t-shirt. Not what I'd expected from a private investigator. Mr. Harlan. She shook my hand with a grip that meant business. Bobby said you've got a situation. I slid my phone across the table. Telematics data pulled up. 8 months of this, maybe more. She scrolled through it, expression neutral. You've got legal access to this vehicle? Co-owner, Nebraska marital property. Good. And the tracking app? Family account. All 3 of us agreed to it. She nodded, made some notes on a legal pad. I charge $95 an hour, minimum 10 hours for a case like this. I don't do anything illegal, I don't testify to anything I can't prove, and I don't give a damn about your feelings. I'm here to document facts. If those facts support what you're thinking, you'll have them. If they don't, you'll have that instead. Either way, you pay the same. That's fair. The man she's meeting, Greg Hollister, according to your records. You know him? Works at our fleet's dispatch office, same company as Kim. Started about 8 months ago. Smooth talker. Always has some comment about how good Kim looks in her work clothes, how smart she is, how she's wasted in dispatch when she could be running the whole operation. I used to think he was just being friendly. And now? Now I think he was running a playbook. Lena's eyebrow went up. 8 months. Same timeline as your telematics. Yeah, I noticed that too. Same month she started coming home different. More interested in her appearance, new perfume, started going to the gym again after years of saying she didn't have time. I thought she was just feeling good about herself. Turns out she was feeling good about someone else. She looked at me for a long moment. Mr. Harlan, I've been doing this for 22 years. 9 times out of 10, the spouse already knows the answer before they hire me. They just need documentation for what comes next. Is that where we're at here? I thought about Kim's cracked laugh, the bounce in her step. 25 minutes in room 1 of 14. I need to know for sure, I said. And then I need proof that holds up. Then let's get to work. Riley found me in the garage that night, pretending to organize tools I'd already organized twice. Dad? She was in her pajamas, violin tucked under her arm like she couldn't sleep without it. Can I practice in here? It's 9:30, sweetheart. School night. I know, She plopped down on my work stool, running her fingers over the strings without playing them. Mom was on the phone earlier, with Greg, I think. Her voice was all funny. My hands stilled on the wrench I'd been moving from one drawer to another. Funny how? Giggly. Like when she talks to Aunt Sarah about stuff she doesn't want me to hear. Riley looked up at me with Kim's eyes in my mother's face. She said, "Don't tell Dad. It's a surprise." But she didn't look surprised, happy. She looked sneaky happy. Is she planning something for Christmas? Maybe, I said, because what else could I say? You know how your mom is with secrets. Yeah. Riley didn't sound convinced. Her secrets used to be fun. Week 2, I called the Nebraska Dad Support Hotline from a rest stop outside Grand Island. Free service, 24/7, anonymous. I'd found the number on a poster in the pilot bathroom of all places. My wife's odometer doesn't match her story, I told the woman on the other end. I've got timestamps and locations and everything points to what I think it points to, but I keep hoping I'm wrong. Have you confronted her about the discrepancies? Tried. She had an explanation for everything. Stress miles, client reroutes, coffee runs that apparently require 200 extra miles of driving. The counselor was quiet for a moment. What's your gut telling you? That I'm not crazy, that the numbers are right, that my daughter's going to be collateral damage in something she didn't ask for. Your daughter needs stability right now, whatever that looks like. Document what you're finding, but don't make any big moves until you've got a clear picture. And whatever you do, don't put her in the middle. She's already in the middle. She just doesn't know it yet. The sticker showed up on a Tuesday. Riley had left her violin case open on the kitchen table, and I was putting away her lesson books when I spotted it. A glittery star sticker stuck to the inside of the case lid, the kind you get from dentists' offices or checkout counters at grocery stores. Except this one had writing on it in gold marker. Star Player G. Hey, Rye, I called into the living room where she was doing homework. Where'd this sticker come from? She bounded in, saw what I was pointing at, and her face did something complicated. Oh, that. Mom gave it to me. Mom gave you a sticker signed G? She said it was from a work friend. Said not to tell you because... Riley stopped, clearly realizing she was about to say something she shouldn't. Because what? Because it was a special tune-up gift. For my case. And you might think it was silly. I stared at that sticker for a long time after Riley went back to her homework. A grown man, presumably with a wife and a job and responsibilities, giving gifts to my 12-year-old daughter. Using my kid as part of whatever game he and Kim were playing. That's when the slow burn turned into something hotter. I confronted Kim the next evening, out in the yard where Riley couldn't hear. She was pruning her rose bushes, the ones she'd planted our first spring in the house, back when we still talked about having more kids. The sticker in Riley's case, I said. From G, that's Greg, isn't it? Kim's pruning shears stopped mid-snip. It's just a dumb sticker, Cal. He saw her at the holiday party and thought she was cute. Kid stuff. Kid stuff? I let that hang there. Like your log shows you looping to Des Moines for kid stuff? Like your telematics show you idling at his apartment complex for kid stuff? Her face went pale. The pruning shears slipped from her fingers, landing in the mulch with a soft thud. You've been tracking me? It's our car. It's our family app. I've been tracking our vehicle, and our data shows you've been places you said you weren't for meetings that don't exist, doing things you haven't explained. You're paranoid. This is crazy. But her voice cracked on the last word. Not confident, not dismissive. Scared. Am I? Show me your phone right now. Show me your messages with Greg. And if they're all about audits and quarterly reports like you said, I'll drop it. We'll go inside, have dinner, watch Riley's favorite show, and I'll never mention it again. She didn't reach for her phone. Her hand actually moved toward her back pocket, then stopped, like her brain had overridden the instinct. That's what I thought. Kim set down the pruning shears and turned to face me fully. In the fading light, I could see the woman I'd married somewhere beneath the panic, the girl who'd passed me notes in chemistry class, who'd cried when I proposed in the parking lot of our first apartment, who'd held my hand so hard during Riley's birth that she'd left bruises. 14 years, half my adult life. There were tears in her eyes, real ones or performance ones, I couldn't tell anymore. It's over, okay? Whatever you think was happening, it's done. I ended it. So something was happening. A mistake. A stupid, stress-induced mistake that never should have. 8 months, Kim. That's not a mistake. That's a second job. That's a whole other life running parallel to the one you supposedly had with me. What do you want me to say? I want you to say you didn't use our daughter as cover. I want you to say you didn't take her to that man's apartment while I was on the road. I want you to say you didn't let him give her gifts like he was already part of this family. Kim's silence said everything. I filed for temporary support 3 days later, citing irreconcilable differences. Nebraska's a no-fault state, which means I didn't have to prove the affair to start the process, but the 30-day notice period gave us both time to figure out next steps. Kim got served via certified mail at her office, which was petty of me but felt necessary. Let her explain that to her coworkers. Let her explain it to Greg. The first mediation session was required by Nebraska law before any formal divorce filing. $135 an hour, partially covered by my insurance through United Healthcare. The mediator was a silver-haired woman named Dorothy, who looked like she'd heard every sob story in the book and wasn't impressed by any of them. The room was beige in that specific way only legal offices manage. Beige walls, beige carpet, beige furniture that probably cost a fortune but looked like it came from a government surplus store. Kim sat across from me with her attorney, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia who billed $300 an hour and looked like she was worth every penny. Mr. Harlan, you've indicated concerns about transparency in the marriage. Can you elaborate? My wife's been having an affair with a coworker for at least 8 months. I have documentation, vehicle telematics, location data, photographs, time-stamped, GPS-tagged, admissible in court. Kim's attorney held up a hand. Alleged affair. My client maintains that any outside relationship has ended and she's committed to reconciliation. Your client maintained that nothing was happening until I showed her the data. Told me I was paranoid. Told me it was stress miles and coffee runs and client reroutes. Her credibility's not exactly sterling. Dorothy made a note, her pen scratching across the legal pad like judgment being recorded. Mrs. Harlan, do you dispute the documentation your husband has referenced? Kim's jaw tightened. She was wearing the blouse I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. Blue silk, made her eyes pop. I wondered if that was deliberate, some kind of psychological play, or if she just grabbed whatever was clean. I don't dispute that I made poor choices. I dispute the characterization that I'm some kind of monster, I offered. Nobody said that. I said you cheated. For 8 months. While our daughter was doing homework and I was hauling freight to pay for her braces and her violin strings and the roof over our heads. This isn't productive, Kim's attorney cut in. We're here to discuss a path forward, not relitigate the past. The past is pretty relevant when it's going to determine custody arrangements. The past is pretty relevant when my 12-year-old knows something's wrong and can't figure out why her mom sounds different on the phone. The session went downhill from there. Lena Tate called me the following week with her preliminary report. I've been monitoring the fleet schedules through a public records request. Nebraska Open Public Records Act, completely above board. Greg Hollister's logged hours don't match his physical presence at the dispatch office. He's been clocking overtime he's not working, and your wife's been approving those timesheets. So they're stealing from the company too? That's for the company to determine. But it gives you leverage. If she fights you on the divorce terms, you've got documentation of financial impropriety that could affect her employment. I don't want to destroy her career. That's admirable, Mr. Harlan, but you might want to keep it in your back pocket. I also got access to something else that week, though I'm not proud of how it happened. Kim had left her tablet at the house when she picked up some clothes, and she'd forgotten to log out of her messages. One-party consent state, Nebraska. I wasn't breaking any laws by reading what was on a device in my own home. Greg's messages to her were worse than I'd imagined. Missing our mile markers, one read from the previous month. Your curves are better than any chassis I've ever tuned. And then, the one that made me see red. Riley's practice schedule works perfect for us. Kid's a great cover. Doesn't suspect a thing. They'd been using my daughter's violin lessons as alibis. Every time Kim dropped Riley at Ms. Patterson's studio, she'd apparently been making detours to Greg's apartment. My kid's gift, her passion, her joy, turned into a scheduling tool for her mother's affair. I didn't punch anything that night either. But it was close. Riley's behavior started changing around week 6. She'd always been an easy kid, did her homework without being asked, practiced violin because she loved it, helped with dishes because she said it gave her thinking time. But that January, she started snapping at Kim for small things, leaving cabinets open, forgetting to buy her favorite cereal. You forgot the rosin, too, Riley said at dinner one night, pushing her chicken around her plate. Ms. Patterson says I need new rosin, and you said you'd get it 2 weeks ago. I've been busy, honey. Work has been. You're always busy, except when you're not. Riley looked at her mother with an expression I'd never seen before, something hard and knowing. I heard you on the phone with him again, when you thought I was asleep. Kim's fork clattered against her plate. Riley, you're not supposed to make that voice with other people. That's Dad's voice. The silence that followed was deafening. Kim excused herself to the bathroom. I helped Riley clear the dishes, neither of us saying anything, the weight of what she'd just said filling the kitchen like smoke. She's not going to stop, is she? Riley asked, voice small. I don't know, sweetheart. Are you going to leave? I knelt down so I was at her eye level. Nothing is going to change how much I love you. No matter what happens with me and your mom, you're my girl. That's permanent. Riley hugged me so hard I felt my ribs creak. I know, she whispered. I just wish she knew it too. The therapy started in February. Joint family sessions, required by the mediator to assess family dynamics before custody arrangements could be finalized. The therapist was a young guy named Dr. Reeves who had one of those offices with sand trays and fidget toys and inspirational posters about feelings. We're going to do an exercise today, Dr. Reeves said during our 3rd session. I want each of you to suggest a word that represents what you need from this family. We'll write them down and discuss. Riley went first. Honesty, she said without hesitation. Kim flinched. Trust, she offered, which felt rich coming from her. I thought about it for a minute. Stability. Dr. Reeves wrote the words on a whiteboard. Interesting that all three of these connect, isn't it? Honesty builds trust, and trust creates stability. Mrs. Harlan, how do you think the family can work toward these goals? I think we need to focus on the future instead of the past. The past is how we got here, I said. You can't build a future on a foundation you won't acknowledge is cracked. Cal, you used our daughter's violin lessons as cover for your affair. You let that man give her stickers and treats like he was shopping for a role in her life. That's not the past. That's my kid's present, and it's affecting her. Dr. Reeves held up a hand. Mr. Harlan, I understand your frustration, but Riley told me she hears her mother making Dad's voice with someone else on the phone. She's 12. She shouldn't know what that means, and she shouldn't have to carry it. Kim started crying. Real tears this time. I could tell by the way her mascara ran. I never meant for her to be hurt. Then why'd you do it in the first place? No answer. There never was. March brought Greg's ex-wife. I joined an online forum for divorced dads. Not something I'd ever imagined myself doing, but the support hotline counselor had recommended it, and I was running out of people to talk to who understood what I was going through. The trucker guys at the yard were sympathetic, but most of them had never dealt with anything like this. The forum was different. Anonymous usernames, no judgment, just men going through the same meat grinder comparing notes. Guys who'd lost everything. Guys who were just starting to rebuild. Guys in the middle of the storm wondering if they'd ever see clear sky again. It helped. Not like therapy helped. Not like talking to Riley helped. But in its own way. Knowing I wasn't alone. Knowing other men had survived this. Knowing the rage and grief and confusion I felt every day wasn't a sign of weakness. It was just part of the process. A woman named Silverado Survivor messaged me directly after I posted about my situation. I saw your story, she wrote. The fleet auditor angle caught my eye. My ex-husband worked the same job until 2 years ago. His name was Greg. I stared at my screen for a full minute before responding. You're his ex? Divorced him after I caught him with a dispatcher from his previous company. She'd poached him from our marriage with the same routine. Late nights, mysterious mileage, audit meetings that went 3 hours long. Kim started seeing him 8 months ago, right after a dispatch seminar I encouraged her to attend. That's his hunting ground. Seminars, conferences, anywhere married women feel overwhelmed by their jobs and flattered by attention. He's got a type. My daughter's been caught in the middle. So was ours. Our son was 10 when it all came out. Greg used him the same way. Baseball practice pickups, play dates that gave him cover. Kids are convenient alibis when you're sneaking around. My hands were shaking. How'd you find out? Same way you did, probably. Numbers didn't add up. Mileage, expenses, time. He's sloppy about the details because he thinks nobody's paying attention. What happened to him? Lost his job, lost his custody bid, lost most of our assets because he'd been skimming from our joint accounts to fund his little adventures. Last I heard, he'd moved to Nebraska and found a new company to work for. I wanted to throw my laptop through the window. He's still doing the same thing. Of course he is. Men like Greg don't stop because they got caught. They just find new marks. Armed with this new information, I went back to Lena Tate. His ex-wife's willing to provide a statement, I told her. Pattern of behavior, similar tactics, the whole thing. Lena nodded, making notes. That's helpful for establishing character, but it's not going to win your case by itself. We need documentation specific to your marriage. What about the pay stub irregularities? The overtime he didn't work? I've pulled those records through your attorney's subpoena request. Greg's been logging an average of 15 hours of overtime per week that he can't account for. Your wife's signature is on every timesheet. So she's been covering for him financially. Looks like it. There's about $2,500 in questionable payroll over the past quarter alone. That's not just infidelity. That's potential fraud. I sat back in my chair. I don't want to blow up her career. You might not have a choice. If you're going for primary custody, you need to demonstrate that she's made decisions that put your daughter at risk. Financial impropriety with a romantic partner fits that pattern. Riley loves her mom. I know. But Riley also deserves a stable home with a parent who puts her first. Right now, your wife's been putting a lot of things ahead of your daughter. Her own needs, her own desires, her own secrets. That's a pattern, Mr. Harlan, and judges notice patterns. What do you need from me? Keep doing what you're doing. Document everything. Stay calm. Don't give her ammunition to paint you as the bad guy. And most importantly, be there for your kid. At the end of the day, that's what this is all about. She wasn't wrong. The fleet mixer was Kim's idea, ironically. Every spring, the dispatch office hosted a shift share event, potluck dinner, awards for driver performance, chance for the office staff and the road crews to mingle. Kim had organized it for the past 3 years, and this year was supposed to be her biggest production yet. She'd sent out invitations weeks in advance, ordered catering, rented a projector for the awards presentation. I'd been planning to skip it. What was the point? Everyone at that company knew our business by now. Small office, big gossip. The secretary had given me sympathetic looks the last time I'd stopped by to pick up paperwork. The foreman had pulled me aside to say, "Hang in there, brother," like I was running a marathon instead of a divorce. But then I got an idea. Riley had been learning video editing for a school project, some historical documentary thing about Nebraska statehood, and she was weirdly good at it. Natural instinct for pacing, music selection, transitions. So I asked her if she'd help me put together a highlights reel for the mixer. Photos from the year, funny quotes from the CB, that kind of thing. "Can I pick the music?" she asked. "You can pick everything. I trust you." What I didn't tell her was that I'd slipped a few additional images into the folder she was working from. Nothing explicit, just a few receipts and timestamps that happened to show some interesting patterns. Fuel purchases at Greg's apartment complex. Motel charges on the company card during client visits. Little breadcrumbs that, when displayed on a projector in front of 50 people, might raise some questions. Was it petty? Absolutely. Was it mature? Not even close. But I'd spent months being the bigger person, documenting everything properly, following legal channels, and watching Kim continue to gaslight everyone around her about what had really happened. Sometimes the high road just leads to more traffic. The mixer was held in the fleet's warehouse bay, trucks pushed back to make room for folding tables and a makeshift stage. The smell of diesel mixed with potluck casseroles in a way that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. I recognized most of the faces, drivers I'd run loads with for years, dispatchers who'd guided me through blizzards, mechanics who'd saved my bacon more times than I could count. Kim was in her element, working the room like a politician at a fundraiser. Shaking hands, accepting compliments on the decorations, laughing at jokes that probably weren't that funny. Greg lurked near the food table, nursing a beer and avoiding eye contact with me. The slideshow started at 7:30. Riley had done a beautiful job. Photos of rigs on the open road, sunrise over the Platte, drivers mugging for the camera at rest stops. The music swelled at all the right moments. People clapped when their faces appeared on screen. And then, between a shot of the company Christmas party and a picture of the dispatch team, came the receipts. Just 3 slides. Quick succession. Date, location, amount. Greg's apartment complex. The motel off I-80. A gas station 30 miles from anywhere Kim should have been on a Tuesday afternoon. I watched Kim's face go white. Greg's went red. Someone in the back muttered, "What the hell?" A phone appeared, then another. The warehouse bay filled with the soft click of screenshots being taken. The slide lingered for maybe 3 seconds before Riley clicked to the next one. A perfectly innocent photo of our safety awards ceremony. But the damage was done. Whispers spread through the room like wildfire through dry brush. The dispatcher, who'd been Kim's closest ally at work, was staring at her with an expression that said, "We need to talk." Several drivers had formed a huddle near the exit, phones out, comparing notes. Greg left before the potluck was even served, practically sprinting for his Silverado. Kim lasted another 20 minutes before claiming a migraine. "You did that on purpose," she hissed at me as she grabbed her purse. "Did what?" "You know what?" I shrugged. "Must have been a glitch. Technology, right? Never works when you need it to." Riley helped me pack up the projector with a smile on her face I couldn't quite explain. "Was that what I think it was?" she asked quietly. "What do you think it was?" "Justice." I didn't correct her. Things moved fast after the mixer. Kim's supervisor called her in for a review meeting that Monday. The pay stub irregularities I'd documented went straight to HR through Lena Tate's contacts. Anonymous tip, completely untraceable back to me. The company launched an internal investigation that put both Kim and Greg on administrative leave pending results. Meanwhile, the custody evaluation was moving forward. Nebraska law says kids 12 and older can express a preference about which parent they want to live with, and the guardian ad litem assigned to Riley's case, a no-nonsense attorney named Martha, who'd been doing this for 30 years, was taking that preference seriously. "Your daughter's been very clear in our conversations," Martha told me at our meeting. "She loves both her parents, but she feels safer with you. She feels like she can trust you. Kim's her mother." "I know, and I'm not recommending no contact. That would be harmful to everyone. But primary residence, decision-making authority on education and healthcare? Based on what I've seen and heard, I'm leaning your direction." "What does that mean for visitation?" "Standard schedule, every other weekend, Wednesday dinners, alternating holidays. Kim will still be very much in Riley's life. This isn't about punishing anyone. It's about what's best for a 12-year-old girl who's been through more than any kid should have to handle." I rubbed my face with both hands, exhaustion settling into my bones like winter cold. I never wanted any of this. I just wanted a normal family, normal marriage, normal life. Nobody gets normal, Mr. Harlan. We just get whatever we get, and we deal with it as best we can. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I just felt tired. The divorce trial took 3 days in Douglas County District Court. The courthouse smelled like old carpet and anxiety. That specific institutional scent that lets you know important things happen here, none of them pleasant. I wore my best suit, the one I'd bought for my brother's wedding 5 years ago, and hoped it still fit well enough to make me look like a responsible parent and not a trucker who lived in flannel shirts and coffee-stained thermals. My attorney, a no-nonsense woman named Sandra, who'd come highly recommended by the trucking union, met me in the hallway with a thick binder of documents. "You ready?" "No." "Good answer. The ones who say yes are usually lying." She patted my arm. "Just tell the truth. That's all you have to do. The facts are on your side." Day 1 was documentation. My attorney presented the telematics data, the location history, the pay stub irregularities, Greg's ex-wife's statement, Riley's therapy notes with appropriate redactions, and the timeline showing exactly how long the affair had been going on. Exhibits A through M, each one another nail in the coffin of my marriage. Kim's attorney tried to paint it as a momentary lapse in an otherwise solid marriage, but that's a hard sell when you've got 8 months of hotel receipts and GPS coordinates. Judge Carlson, no relation to anyone I knew, just the luck of the docket, listened without expression, making occasional notes on his legal pad. "Your Honor," Kim's attorney said during her opening statement, "this was a marriage under strain. My client was lonely, overwhelmed by work responsibilities, and made poor choices during a vulnerable time. She has since ended the relationship in question and is committed to rebuilding her family." My attorney countered with the facts. Not emotional appeals. Not dramatic speeches. Just the numbers. Day 2 was testimony. Kim took the stand and cried about stress and loneliness and feeling neglected while I was on the road. Fair points, some of them. I had been gone a lot. Long-haul trucking isn't a 9-to-5 job. You miss birthdays and anniversaries and school plays and Sunday dinners. You see your family through phone screens and hear their voices through static. It wears on everyone. But that's not a justification for what she did. It's an explanation, maybe, not an excuse. Mrs. Harlan, my attorney asked during cross-examination, did you ever tell your husband you were feeling neglected? Kim dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I tried. He was always so focused on work, on making sure we had enough money for Riley's activities, for the house payments. Did you suggest couples counseling? No. Did you ask him to reduce his driving schedule? I didn't want to put pressure on him. I knew how much he valued providing for our family. But you did want to pursue a relationship with Mr. Hollister? It wasn't like that. It just happened. 8 months of hotel rooms and falsified timesheets just happened. I don't know. Kim's voice broke. I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how I became this person. That's convenient, Mrs. Harlan. When did you realize you'd become this person? When my husband showed me the data. When I saw it all laid out like that. The dates, the locations. And I realized how much of my life had become a lie. Day 3 was the judge's decision. Primary custody to me, with Kim getting every other weekend and Wednesday dinners. Child support calculated per Nebraska guidelines. Marital assets split 60-40 in my favor due to dissipation, legal term for spending marital money on an affair, covering hotel rooms and dinners and gifts that should have been funding our daughter's future instead. The house was mine to refinance. Kim would need to find her own place. I sat in that courtroom watching my marriage get divided up like estate sale furniture, listening to the judge read numbers that represented 14 years of shared dreams and compromises, and ordinary Tuesday nights watching television together. And I felt nothing. Just empty. Just done. 6 weeks after the trial, Kim got formally demoted at work. No longer dispatch supervisor, just a regular scheduler. The title change came with a pay cut that probably hurt worse than the public humiliation. Greg got reassigned to a different branch, which everyone knew meant he was being shuffled out the door in slow motion. The company didn't want the liability of keeping either of them in positions of authority. Word traveled fast in the trucking world. Within days, every driver in the fleet knew what had happened. Some of them stopped talking to Kim entirely. Others went out of their way to be friendly with me, clapping me on the shoulder, buying me coffee at rest stops, telling me I'd handled it like a man. I wasn't sure what that meant exactly, but I appreciated the sentiment. I heard through the yard grapevine that Kim was couch surfing, bouncing between her sister's place and a friend from church. She'd texted me once asking if we could talk about what's best for Riley, which was code for wanting more custody time without going back to court. I met her at a coffee shop near Riley's school, neutral territory. She won't talk to me, Kim said. She looked thinner than I remembered, tired in a way that wasn't about work. I call and she gives one-word answers. I take her on weekends and she just sits in her room. She's processing. She's punishing me. Maybe she has a right to. Kim's eyes flashed. I'm still her mother. I made a mistake, a huge one, but I'm still her mother. You used her violin lessons as alibi cover for your affair. You let your boyfriend give her presents like he was auditioning for stepdad. You lied to her face for 8 months, and when she started figuring it out, you kept lying. That's not a mistake, Kim. That's a choice. A bunch of choices made over and over again that put your wants ahead of her needs. I didn't mean... You did, though. Maybe you didn't mean to get caught, but you meant everything else? I finished my coffee and stood up. Riley will come around eventually. She loves you. But you're going to have to earn back her trust, and that's going to take a lot longer than a few weekends. What about you? Will you ever forgive me? I thought about it honestly. The anger had burned itself out over the past few months, replaced by something duller and heavier. Not forgiveness exactly, more like acceptance. I don't know, I said, but I'm not trying anymore. I've got a kid to raise. Mia Reyes started as a temporary dispatcher 3 weeks after my divorce finalized. She wasn't anything like Kim. Shorter, darker hair, laugh that sounded like gravel instead of honey. She'd come up through the ranks at a competing fleet before jumping ship for better benefits, and she had zero patience for drama. I heard about what happened with the last supervisor, she told me during her first week when I stopped by the dispatch office to drop off some paperwork. Office politics like that are why I left my last job. It was more than office politics. I know. Small industry, big gossip. She handed me my load assignment. For what it's worth, you seem like someone who got dealt a bad hand and played it right. That's a generous read. I'm a generous person. She smiled. Quick, professional, nothing flirtatious about it. Good luck on your run. I thought about her on the drive to Colorado. Not in a romantic way exactly, just in a, there are still decent people in the world way. It was a nice change. Summer came, and with it, Riley's transformation. The angry, suspicious kid who'd spent the winter waiting for the other shoe to drop started to relax. Maybe it was the stability of knowing where she'd sleep every night. Maybe it was the therapy finally sinking in. Maybe it was just the passage of time doing what time does, smoothing rough edges, softening sharp corners, turning fresh wounds into scars you could live with. She'd made junior counselor at her Girl Scout troop, leading the younger kids through badge work and camping skills. I watched her teach a group of 7-year-olds how to tie a bowline knot, patient and encouraging, and saw the woman she was becoming. Strong, capable, kind despite everything she'd been through. Her violin playing had jumped to an intermediate level that made her teacher start talking about regional competitions. She's got something special, Ms. Patterson told me at pickup one day. Not just talent, passion. She plays like she's got something to prove. I didn't mention that she probably did, and she'd stopped waiting for Kim to disappoint her. The expectation had shifted to something healthier. Guarded hope instead of certain betrayal. She still loved her mother. She always would. But she'd learned that love and trust were different things, and you could offer one without giving the other. "Dad?" she asked one evening while we were grilling burgers in the backyard. "Do you think Mom's ever going to change?" "What do you mean?" "Like, do you think she's going to stop being someone who does stuff like that, or is she always going to be, you know, that way?" I flipped a burger, buying time. People can change, Rye, but it takes work, and they have to want to. Your mom's got a lot of work to do. Do you want her to? I want her to be someone you can count on, whatever that looks like. Riley nodded, processing. I think I want that too. But I'm not going to wait around for it. That's probably smart. I learned it from you. She said it so casually, like it wasn't the highest compliment anyone had ever paid me. I had to turn back to the grill so she wouldn't see my eyes water. September brought Greg's final exit. His reassignment had turned into a termination after the HR investigation found enough irregularities to justify it. Last I heard, he'd moved back to Kansas, tail between his legs, reputation torched, ex-wife's warnings finally proving prophetic to whoever would listen. Kim filed for a custody modification around the same time, claiming she'd gotten stable and wanted more time with Riley. The court evaluator did another home study and found an apartment she could barely afford, a job that was barely a step above entry level, and a social life that consisted mostly of AA meetings. Wait, I said when my attorney told me about the AA part. She's in recovery? Apparently she started drinking after you separated. Got bad enough that her sister made her get help. I didn't know what to feel about that. Relief that she was getting better? Guilt that my exposing her affair had sent her spiraling? Anger that she'd added another problem to her pile? Will it affect the custody modification? Probably not. She's been consistent with meetings, no incidents. Judge will likely see it as a positive step. The modification hearing was brief. Kim got one additional weeknight added to her schedule, Thursdays instead of just Wednesdays, plus an extra hour on her weekend visits. Riley handled the news better than I expected. Maybe it's good, she said. Maybe she needs me to give her a reason to try. Sometimes my daughter's wisdom scared me. October. Mia and I had our first coffee outside of work. She'd been helping me navigate a paperwork mess with my fleet certification. Nothing romantic, just two professionals dealing with the kind of bureaucratic nonsense that trucking companies generate like exhaust fumes. But the coffee ran long, and we ended up talking about things that had nothing to do with trucking. Families, mistakes, the weird way life sometimes crashes into you from angles you never expected. Her divorce had been simpler than mine. No kids, grown apart, stayed friends after the papers were signed. They'd met young, married younger, realized somewhere around 30 that they'd both become different people than the ones who'd stood at the altar. We wanted different things, she said. Neither of us was wrong. We just weren't right together. That sounds civilized? It was. Boring, actually. Sometimes I think a good fight would have been healthier. She stirred her coffee, watching the cream spiral. What about yours? The opposite of boring. So I heard, she smiled. Small industry. Big gossip. Some marriages end because someone messed up, she said. Mine ended because nobody messed up and we still weren't happy. Felt like such a waste. All that time, all that trying, and nothing to show for it but a stack of papers and separate apartments. At least there was no villain in yours. Was there in yours? I thought about it. I used to think so. Now I'm not sure. She did terrible things, but she's still Riley's mom, and Riley needs her to be redeemable. That's pretty evolved. It's exhausted. I just don't have the energy to hate anyone anymore. Mia laughed. A real laugh, not polite or forced. That's when you know you're healing, when the anger stops being worth the effort. I liked her. Not in a sweep you off your feet way, not in a forget everything that happened way. Just in a quiet, comfortable, this person makes sense way. She didn't try to fix me or save me or tell me how I should feel. She just listened. And sometimes that's all you need. It felt sustainable, which was more than I could say for anything else in my life lately. Kim's surprise visit happened in November, a week before Thanksgiving. She'd shown up at Riley's school during lunch, claiming she wanted to surprise her daughter with an early birthday present. The school called me immediately. They'd been briefed on the custody situation and knew Kim wasn't supposed to show up unannounced. I got there in 15 minutes. I just wanted to see her, Kim said, when I found her in the principal's office. I'm her mother. I shouldn't need an appointment. You do, though. That's what the court order says. The court order is ridiculous. I'm not dangerous. Nobody said you were dangerous, but you've lost the right to show up whenever you want. That's how custody works when you... I stopped myself. Riley was waiting in the hall, probably listening. When I what? You know what? The principal diplomatically suggested that Kim leave before this escalated further. She did, but not before giving me a look that mixed equal parts resentment and something that might have been shame. Dr. Reeves had to talk Riley through it at their next session. Boundaries, expectations, the difference between love and entitlement. Riley came out of that session with red eyes but a straighter spine. She doesn't get to just show up, Riley told me in the car afterward. That's not how this works anymore. That's right. I wish she understood that. Give her time. I've been giving her time. Riley stared out the window at the parking lot. I'm running out. Thanksgiving was quiet. Just me, Riley, my mom up from Topeka, and a turkey that was too big for 3 people. We ate until we couldn't move, watched football until we fell asleep on the couch, and didn't talk about Kim at all. It was perfect. December arrived with a card in the mail, no return address, just a Lincoln postmark. Inside was a handwritten note. Your stand cleaned house. Mill's running honest now. Thanks from the ones who stayed. I stared at that note for a long time. The mill was trucker slang for a fleet company, and the only person who'd call their workplace that was someone who'd been there long enough to know the old terminology. One of Kim's former co-workers, probably. Someone who'd benefited from the house cleaning that followed everything coming to light. Ironic. I'd blown up my marriage trying to get answers, and somehow I'd also blown up a corruption scheme I didn't even know existed. Greg's fake overtime had been the tip of an iceberg. Once HR started digging, they found other irregularities. People who'd been skimming. Supervisors who'd been looking the other way. Kim's affair had been the match that lit a bonfire nobody expected. I threw the card in the recycling and went to help Riley with her homework. Christmas Eve, Mia came over for dinner. It was the first time she'd been to the house, and I was nervous in a way I hadn't been since high school. I'd cleaned obsessively, made sure Riley's room was presentable, worried about what they'd think of each other. I shouldn't have bothered. Your dad says you're pretty good at violin, Mia said while I was finishing the roast. He's biased, Riley said. I'm okay. Play something for me. Riley looked surprised but pleased. She pulled out her instrument and played something complicated. Bach, I think, while Mia listened with actual attention. Not polite attention, the real kind. You're more than okay, Mia said when she finished. That was beautiful. Thanks. Riley actually blushed. Dad said you're teaching him about dispatch paperwork. Trying to. He's a slow learner. That's true. He still can't program the DVR. Hey, I said from the kitchen. I'm standing right here. They both laughed. Same rhythm, same pitch. It sounded like something new growing in familiar soil. Dinner was good. Conversation was easy. Riley excused herself after dessert to let the adults talk, which was so pointed it made Mia snort. She's testing me, Mia said when we were alone. Is she? Seeing if I'm going to stick around. Kids do that when they've been through what she has. They want to know if you're worth the risk. And? Are you? Mia looked at me over her wine glass. I don't make promises I can't keep, but I don't make trouble either. I'm not her mom, and I'm not trying to be. I'm just someone who thinks her dad's worth getting to know better. That's a pretty good answer. I've had practice. We sat on the porch later, watching snow drift down over the neighborhood. Christmas lights blinking from every house, cars crunching slowly through accumulating white, the whole world looking like a greeting card. Hell of a year, I said. Hell of a year, she agreed. Think the next one will be better? Mia took my hand. Her fingers were warm despite the cold. Only one way to find out. New Year's Day, Riley asked if she could make a resolution out loud. Go for it, I said. She stood up from the breakfast table like she was giving a speech. I resolved to stop waiting for things to go wrong. I resolved to let good things be good without worrying about when they'll stop. I resolved to trust people until they give me a reason not to, instead of the other way around. That's a lot for one resolution. It's really one thing in 3 parts. She sat back down. I learned it from watching you. When everything was falling apart, you didn't give up. You just kept going. Found the truth, dealt with it, built something new. I want to be like that. I had to look away for a second. You already are, sweetheart. I know, she grinned. But it's nice to hear. Kim picked Riley up that afternoon for her scheduled visit. She looked better than she had in months. Hair done, actual color in her cheeks, something approaching calm in her eyes. Thank you for the extra Thursday, she said, while Riley grabbed her overnight bag. It means a lot. She's your daughter too. I know. I'm trying to deserve that. It wasn't forgiveness. Probably wouldn't ever be. But it was something. A door left cracked instead of slammed. A chance for things to be different, if she could manage to walk through it without tripping over her own feet again. Riley hugged me before getting in her mom's car. See you tomorrow, Dad. See you tomorrow, Ry. I watched them drive away, then went back inside to call Mia. There was a repair project I needed help with. Nothing urgent, just an excuse to hear her voice. She answered on the second ring. You busy? Just finished cleaning up from breakfast. What's up? Wanted to ask if you've ever replaced a kitchen faucet. She laughed. Is that code for something? It's code for my kitchen faucet is leaking and I have no idea what I'm doing. I'll be there in 20 minutes. And Cal? Yeah? Happy New Year. I looked around the house. Riley's violin on its stand, Mia's jacket still hanging by the door from last night, coffee cup in the sink from this morning's quiet breakfast. All of it evidence of a life that had been torn apart and stitched back together into something new. Something that worked. Happy New Year, I said. I think it might actually be. The faucet could wait until tomorrow.